This is the Oracle Podcast with Ben Moa. Welcome back to the Oracle Podcast. Thanks for tuning in. This is episode 9 of the Oracle. Thank you for everyone who has been part of the Oracle since episode 1, and even those who are joining in for the first time right now. I'd just like to thank you so much for the support. Episode 9. This is such an inspiring conversation I had with a woman named Daquila, who you guys will be meeting just now. And the question that comes to my mind when I think of this conversation that I had with her is, what are we willing to sacrifice, or what are we willing to give up to chase one of our dreams? I think it's so risky. We talked about that before with our conversation with Keynes. It's so risky to chase what we feel convicted of. But are we willing to lose everything trying our conviction, or are we just willing to just stay comfortable, not chasing what we feel like we're supposed to do? It's a big struggle, something I've struggled with many times before when I was choosing what university to go to or choosing what province to pastor in. But, I think God really honors our determination to chase things that he puts in our heart. But that's enough out of me. Hope you guys are inspired by this conversation just to analyze your situation that you're in and maybe inspired to do something more. Thanks for tuning in.
Okay. My name is Lily Love Daquila. So Love is actually my legal middle name. I'm from Toronto, Ontario, Canada, and I am a private special education consultant.
Okay, so what does your day-to-day look like, kind of? What do you do?
Well, my day-to-day it varies from day to day because what I work with is an entire system that supports or surrounds students with special needs. So for some students, depending on the severity of their challenges, they are either in a segregated classroom, they could be in a specialized center, they could be integrated into what you call a typical classroom, or they are receiving services privately at home. So when I work with clients, when I first initially consult with them, I look to see what their needs are, assess some of their goals, because my whole major goal is to increase independence as much as possible for this individual. And then I take a look at their resources and analyze what's possible. So sometimes that means that I'm working in schools with a school team specifically for one student, however their environment may look. Other times I'm working with teachers. I've got associations with school boards, but I also am part of a collective organization, Bridges Canada, that targets students who use special education technology and equipment. So go ahead.
I was like, so how did you get there? Like, how did you even end up with that job, or like, what did you have to do to get this job?
So for as long as I can remember, I knew that I wanted to work with kids. And so originally, I think that when you have that goal in mind, you're thinking education. But I was so against just going through like straight up education. So when I was looking at different jobs and possibilities in high school, I actually picked speech language pathology because one of my classmates kind of brought it up in passing, and I had no idea what it was about. So I went and I did some research on it, and I was like, okay, this seems pretty interesting. Let's go for that. So when I went to Andrews University, that was actually my degree. I was in speech language pathology and audiology, and I was taking the speech language route. So I would have to take my bachelor's and then my master's into that. Um, The thing was, though, is that the parts of speech language pathology that I liked, ironically, were when I was able to practice in the school system. So then there was that part of my mind that was kind of tugging at me, um, stirring me towards education, even though I was trying to turn the other direction. I ended up actually taking education later on, and so then now I have both a speech language pathology and audiology degree as well as an education degree. And the job market at the time for teachers, as it is now, is very saturated when you're in a city like Toronto. So you have so many people going up for temporary positions, which is what I was doing. So I was in the midst of just taking over temporary, either part time or short term contracts in teaching. And in my head, I was just thinking, this job situation financially is so unstable. If I'm going to be unstable, why am I relying on somebody else for my employment? Right? And so through my experiences with education, I noticed gaps in the system. And it's not gaps in the system because of lack of caring or resources or anything like that. It's gaps in the system because there's really no resources there to fill them. And particularly, I was drawn to students with special needs because my brain thinks completely out of the box. And a lot of the methods and techniques and strategies that I was using with students were successful, but they wouldn't necessarily be considered conventional education. So then I was thinking to myself at the same time, well, why am I trying to fit myself into a box? Education and learning is so diverse. Why can't I be out of it and still be able to help the students that I want to help? So I took a leap in 2011 and I quit the job that I was in April 2011. And I started with one special education client. And that's kind of how I veered off into this whole world of private practice.
That's crazy. So you just dropped everything and you fall just like you realize that the situation you were in, it's better to take a risk on what you know that you can do
Exactly.
than just stay in that situation that you were in.
Absolutely. Because if I couldn't, I mean I think the basic goal of teachers coming out of teachers college or after you've obtained your teacher certification is I want to be hired full time by a school board because that's stable and I love teaching and so this is the route that I'm taking and it's one of the ways that you can get into education and it's one of the quote unquote more stable ways of doing it. But if you're going through this route and things are unstable, then wouldn't you much rather have things unstable on your own terms rather than relying on somebody else? Right. So it's scary. And I have to admit, it really was scary to just kind of drop everything and try this out. But the thing is that I have this mindset of you won't know until you try. So you know already what you're capable of doing. It's not to say that you can't go back to that. So if you already know what you're capable of doing, why don't you try something you haven't tried yet?
Wow, that's a word. That's a word. So this started again. I'm just trying to uh, understand. You had this goal of where you're at now from when you were in high school.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Absolutely. Because wired wise, I think, well, I'm the youngest of three kids. So there's this natural tendency to, I want to stand out. But it wasn't until high school where I realized that it wasn't necessarily about standing out. I want to live a life that is purposeful and impactful. And I thought back in high school that the only way to do that was to really find out why I was created and how I was created. Because I think that everybody being created by God is wired in a specific way, and that isn't an accident. And so many people spend a majority of their lives going against the way that God created them to be. So I just kind of wanted to figure out why I was created in the first place, because if He created me, then I have a reason for being here.
I was saying, so what are the steps that you felt like you had to take to be intentional about following this vision that you had?
Um, well, I think this particular vision, the vision that I have of an all-inclusive center for individuals and students with special needs, the first step was just putting it down somewhere where I could see it. So, like there's what I do on the day to day, and I consider that the business side of things, and then there was something that I consider the dream side of things. And so the business side pays the bills. It's the practical, responsible side of me. And then there's this other side that dreams bigger, because why not? So I had this dream of building this center that isn't necessarily a school, but is more resources to support individuals with special needs in unconventional ways. So through the arts, through performance, dance, music, movement, using technology, building communities, sort of like YouTube communities that tie people in together from all over the world, but provide these resources locally to the people who need it. And so the first thing that I had to do was just to, one, admit that I wanted to do it, and two, get it down somewhere where I could see it. I'm a person who is fixated on words and pictures. And so the more that I see something, the more it jars the ideas in my head. So I actually started brainstorming on my glass windows in my apartment using dry erase marker. And that was my first step. I just put down a wish list of things that I wanted to have in this center that I was trying to build. And that's where I started.
That's that's amazing. I think like that's so scary at the same time.
I absolutely agree with that. It's terrifying. It was absolutely terrifying, because the thing is that once you get that dream out of your head and you admit that you want it, once you actually start writing it out or even typing it out, then there's that expectation of, oh, I got to follow through now. But what does that even look like? Where do I even really start with that? Right? But that first step, just being able to put it down in words, to describe it in a way that I can focus on, I think that out of all of those steps, that's the most important one, because it's admitting that I want this, I want to do this, but not just wanting to do this, admitting that this is something that's been in me for a long time and following through with that.
So I'm wondering, Lily, like in this journey so far up to today, especially when you just started, did anything ever go wrong?
Did anything ever go wrong? I think there's a mindset that things that don't go the way that you planned them are things that go wrong. And so has anything major go wrong? No, even though there have been barriers and challenges along the way, because I believe that what do I tell people? Don't be afraid of a no. Like, don't be afraid of somebody saying no. We have an entire world filled with so many people. The people that you were meant to work with and meant to reach will say yes. And if you get a no, you brush it off and you move on to the next person, because the person that you met with who gave you that no wasn't meant for you. So to say that anything has anything gone wrong, not necessarily. Have plans changed? Absolutely. But as long as you're moving forward, then you're not headed in a wrong direction. I think that by setting goals that are achievable and having measurable milestones in between, you notice the progress that you've done, even though there's so much left to do. So I can't say that anything major has gone wrong.
So then, like, how do you like move forward? Because I think a lot of the things is one of the easiest ways to achieve dreams is resources, especially financial resources.
Right.
How do you move yourself with no money? Or like, how did you even get to a place where people like buy in and like can help you with resources? Like, how do you do that?
Well, I think it's more about the mindset and really understanding what I do on a daily basis. This, although this may be my passion project and it may be my baby, I completely, absolutely believe that this is all part of God's purpose for me. So the starting place for me is acknowledging that I'm not doing this by myself, right? And if I'm not doing this by myself and God has a plan, that means that there are people out there that have the resources that I need to do what I need to do. I just have to go find them. And I'm not a conventional thinker. So when I first started trying to think of ways of raising funds, I wrote down a list of really big companies and really big names that I wanted to target. And I wrote them down again on my windows. And I put little check boxes beside them so that whenever I was able to contact anybody related to that company or to that big name person, I'd put a check mark beside it. And so what I started doing is I used social media like Twitter and Instagram and platforms like YouTube to target specific people to find out where they were, how I could reach them, what the avenues of communication were, and if I had to go to an event to meet them, I would get a ticket to that event. I would either fly or drive there. And the whole goal of that was I need to talk to this person because I believe that if I have a conversation with them face to face, they'll see how sincere and passionate I am about something, but also there's a plan that's backing it. So I'm a planner and I love planning. I could only plan so far on my own. So what I did is there's a community that Joseph Gordon-Levitt started called Hit Record. And a lot of people think that Hit Record is a collaborative effort for musicians or artists or things like that, but really it's a community where you barter services. So, for example, if somebody needs somebody to edit a video and you have skills in audio, then you could tag yourself onto a community of people and say, okay, I'm offering some audio editing services and I'm willing to work on other things with you if you can do this for me. So I actually pieced apart a few of my goals that I had for the center and I put it out into the community. So I offer script editing and screenwriting editing, book editing skills. I can edit. So I put that out there as an offering. And what I was asking for, I was asking for people to help me write a business plan. But I broke up the business plan into different parts so nobody ever had the full plan. And what I got back was I got pieces of a business plan which I put together. So at least from a business perspective, I had a plan that I could go with so that when I met with people, I wasn't just talking about a dream. I actually had some research and reason backing it behind me. So I actually worked my way through quite an extensive list. And the thing is that people said yes. you know, it's interesting and scary to try to create a network out of nothing, but it's not impossible because there's something to be said about actually going and asking someone for something. You know, a lot of people are intimidated by doing that because they're either afraid of their rejection or they believe that they are no one who's going to pay attention to me. who am I, right? I know that I'm not significant. I know that nobody knows me. That's a fact. 3, I know that people will say no. So what? If I have to go through a bunch of people who will say no, I know eventually I'm going to find someone to say yes. So I made the most of every single opportunity that I was given, whether it was a network connection, whether I had a person in certain corporate businesses that I can't really mention right now because we have non-disclosure agreements for that. But through a series of meetings, and it took me, wow, it took me a year. I poured my own money into this for a year just to travel to places. But the point is that I got to the people that I needed to get to. And those people got me to more people that I needed to get to. And so it took me a year to plant those seeds concretely. But after that started, it was kind of the snowball effect of things. Because then there was word of mouth and chatter, and people who knew people were starting to talk. And so it got to that point where I was able to get in contact with some private donors as well. So I had partnerships with corporations, and I also had donors who committed to the project, partly because they're looking for a way to leave a legacy and a mark after they're gone and they have the resources to do it. But also on the other side, it was just the fact that I was so committed to getting funding for this that when they talked to me, one of the things that they mentioned was, you believe in this so much, we want to believe in it with you. So to me, those are all God appointed meetings. I can't sit here and say that, oh yeah, I was so charismatic in that. I don't think I was. But what I am is I'm honest about what I wanted to do and why I wanted to do it. And it resonated with the people that I needed to meet. And to me, that's very God appointed and God driven.
So just like out of like genuine curiosity, and I think that
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people kind of, I don't know if this ever happened to you, but did anyone in around you, or even people you care about or that you thought or know care about you, ever tell you that you should just give up, or you should just maybe change directions of what you're doing?
I had some people that were actually pretty close to me that talked about me behind my back, who said in the beginning that what I was trying to do was crazy, and some people thought that I was doing it to seek attention because vocally I was very much out there. I put my dream concept out on Facebook of very publicly in the beginning before I even had concrete legs to stand on when it came to it. So I knew that I opened myself up to public criticism in a way, in a space that contains people who are acquaintances, friends, and close friends. So there are always haters, and I think that when you vocalize something like this on a public venue, people do start to talk because they may have a concept or perspective of you, and if this doesn't agree with how they view you, then it's a matter of talking about you after that, right? So I learned who my real supporters were. So it was a very eye-opening experience. I actually, I accidentally got copied into a chat one time with people who were talking about me, but because they were talking about me, somebody accidentally added me into that group.
That's crazy.
And I scrolled up and I read all of these things, and I said one statement, I don't even know what it was, and I just left the group. And the thing is that because I fixate on words, these words and these titles and these doubts were swimming around in my mind, and I knew that I needed to get rid of that mindset, because I am not how people say I am. I am not who people say I am. I know who I am, and God knows who I am, and that's who I need to focus on. And so I actually wrote down phrases and labels that I saw and heard that were negative, and I changed them into positive words and words of victory and conquering, and I made a post about it, and I created it into a fish, an art project fish, because the thing is that it doesn't matter what people say about you. If you are right with God, if you are on the path that God has created for you, and you truly believe that, if you foster this relationship with Him daily, people will talk about you. And the only way to know what is truth and what is not is if you cling on to the ultimate truth. And the thing with criticism is that you shouldn't ignore it entirely. You should come to terms with it and analyze it, because the thing is that sometimes there is truth in criticism. For the things that are true and you need to adjust in yourself, it's useful for you. For everything else that is untrue and lies, you can discard. So it's a hard experience to realize who your actual circle is when you have thought that other people have been supporting and backing you this whole time. But granting yourself that eye-opening experience and the leeway to grow from that, I think that's the only way that you can handle something that hits close to home.
Wow. Wow, Lily, you're truly an inspiration. I think like everything you've said, not only did it like resonate so strongly with me, I know that's a battle that so many people have, just from just even having a dream spark, to finding the motivation to continue chasing dreams, and even the conflict with people around you. I think so that's so relative. But in wrapping up, just in the sake of the interview, what would you tell people right now, that you know are struggling with pushing themselves, from making a dream into a reality, or writing down a vision?
I think the starting point for me always has to be God, because that's where I'm coming from. Um, to realize that my dreams, although they are mine in my head, they're not my own. So it's always starting from that question: what is my purpose? Why did God create me? If you start from there, your dreams aren't frivolous. I think a lot of times we dream dreams for ourselves, and we don't ask that added question of why did God create me? It's really great to have a dream, and it's really great to push towards that dream, but disappointment comes when you're on a path that isn't yours. And so to really come to terms with the fact that God has a plan for you, and He guides you. He uses your talents and abilities, to be confident in that. I think that's a great mindset and a great starting point to believe or dream any dream.
Thank you so much, Lily, for this wonderful conversation. Thank you for speaking so much inspiration to my life. We have to be confident in our dreams and in our visions. And I think to be confident in that, we have to know what those dreams and visions are. And I believe that those visions and dreams come from God. So I think we have to know God so that we can live out our life to the truest potential. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. We're going to start a series in February called Love at First Sight, and I'm really looking forward to it. We're going to have a lot of awesome features on the episodes, so stay tuned. Again, I'm so blessed for everyone who supported it so far, 9 episodes in. So more to come. God bless, and stay blessed.